Some brands are legendary. In every category, someone sets the standard, and some companies create raving fans. Join Scott Wozniak and Caitlin Johnson of Swaz Consulting as we dig into the tactics and tools behind great organizations. How did the legends do it? And how can you become a legendary brand too? Jonathan Reynolds is our guest today on the Swaz podcast, Make Your Brand Legendary. And he is building his own legendary brand that helps other people build legendary brands. In fact, he's going to be talking about one of the topics that we care very deeply about, how to find and get great people, especially leaders. And that's because Jonathan is the founder and CEO of Titus Talent, one of the best talent firms we have found, revolutionizing an industry on the front edge with a few other groups, but one of the leaders shaping how you think differently about it. If you want to learn how to have great leaders, this is your episode. Also, buckle up because Jonathan is a character and I think you're going to have a blast. So let's dive into this great conversation with my new dear friend. Jonathan, thanks for joining us. I've been looking forward to this, been getting to know you a bunch the last handful of months, and man, I finally have a chance to sit down and officially record some of this. So spoiler alert for those who are just jumping in, man, this is going to be a fun story and fun ride. And I thought we're going to save some time to really get into your deep expertise because it is so critical. But first, I just have to say, getting to know you, what I've learned is like, you didn't start in this really cool leadership talent space. Like, this wasn't the original plan. Can you back up and give us, what was some of the original plan? Like, what were you thinking and where were you originally aiming and heading with your life and career? And how did we get here?
Yeah, I wasn't born into this. It's funny.
It's like, what did you want to be when you grow up?
No one goes to school for like, I want to be a recruiter one day, right. like I want to be a firefighter, a ninja, or a recruiter, it's like, what? No one aspires to that. And I think I was about 15 years old. I'm youngest of 5 kids. I remember with 3 teenagers now at home. I know that suddenly, like, as a parent, I'm like, seriously, you want to have a deep conversation now at this time of night? Like, why didn't you do it earlier when I was awake?
Right.
But I remember sitting at my end of my parents' bed going, what am I supposed to do when I'm older? Like, how am I, I can see all my siblings have gone off and changed in the world, but, do I actually have any skills or strengths or gifts, And my parents said to me, they said, one of the biggest joys in life if you live in the service of others. And I'm thinking, okay, what does that mean? You're like, well, find out something you can do that really helps other people. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I just asked you, what am I supposed to do? And you didn't even help me. You just said, go and help other people. You did the wrong thing. But here I am, I moved to the States after that. And I found myself working with the Christian Missions Organization, and they assigned me, we take high school kids overseas on their summer vacations and go and do short-term missions in Asia and stuff. I had great experiences. Mm-hmm. But through the normal rest of the year, we were all assigned jobs. And I got assigned, first of all, I got assigned as a pot washer in the kitchen. And I was massively offended by that. I thought, surely they see my gifts and abilities beyond this,
Right.
But it was a humbling moment. But I'm like, I got to get myself out of here. How do I get myself out of these kitchens? And I was like, I was talking to some other friends who had assigned jobs that some of them were involved in recruiting, like recruiting more people to the program. And I'm like, I can do that, So I suddenly found myself, in this internal recruiting job for a missions organization. And I was like, I'm pretty good at this. I like people. And I'm kind of like a little sales guy, I got this. After my period there for a couple of years, I ended up in Wisconsin. I know.
Wisconsin land?
Wisconsin land, yeah. We were joking off air about Chicagoland, where I live now.
But nobody else says land. Only Chicago.
Audacity to call it Chicagoland.
Right, right.
It's true.
So now I live in Jonathan land. Wherever I'm at, it's Jonathan. So I found myself going from Texas to Wisconsin. I'm like, all right, now I got to have a real job and get paid and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, I like people. I like business. I like business problems. I like solving people's problems. Most business problems are either money problems or people problems. I wasn't very good with the money, the accounting, the finance side of things.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, ooh, that's not really my strength, you know. I was like, what I am good at is selling people legally. So and I was like, I can do this.
Let's be clear.
And I discovered that the whole industry, and it's a legal industry of selling and renting out people, and it's called recruiting industry. And I'm like, I got this. Then I discovered it was a really dirty industry, like used car sales, like kind of vibe. Like everybody like treats you like you're not trustworthy, you're slimy, you're doing something unethical. And I'm like, what the heck is happening? I chose the wrong industry. And rather than get out of it, I thought, why don't I just change it? Like, why don't I change the land that I'm in when it comes to recruit? I'll change the landscape here. So I stumbled across it, really. It was kind of my heavens open moment. I was sitting with Milwaukee Tool, and I said, what if we did things different? You know, it was 2009. Nobody wanted to spend money on recruiting. And I'm like, I need money. So what if we do things different? And it was right there, kind of like this, here's an idea downloaded from heaven of how to do things differently. And I was like, I love this.
Wow.
And it just, exploded from there. So, yeah, there's the backstory.
There's so many. Okay, I'm going to highlight at least two. Caitlin, you might have some. First, I love this. Your initial entry into recruiting was, well, at least it's not washing the dishes. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's now something you're revolutionizing an industry and become a leader and the impact. But like, that's not where it started. Where it started was, well, like, I guess it's not dishwashing. I think there's a lot of people listening who are wrestling through their life, their career, their stuff. And they're like, but I don't have an initial grand passion. Sometimes the early exploration is like, I mean, maybe I'll just give it a try. Don't despise these small practical beginnings where you're just exploring stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was definitely some moments where I could have just sort of, this is not for me, or this doesn't meet all of the. It's funny in America. I love America. I say British by birth, American by choice.
Nice.
And I married my green card. Great. So,
you're doing all the legal
things. I love America. Yeah, I'm doing everything right. Okay. Yeah. There was a small period of time where I was an undocumented worker, which that's probably a story for another day. But I'm a citizen now, so that's all in the past. But I love America's so rich on choice. Mm-hmm. Which I think is amazing. Like, we have such a privilege in choosing where we work, who we work with, the type of work we do, which is both a joy and a bit of a curse as well for the abundance of choice. Yes. Really hard for the generation coming through.
I've got a daughter graduating high school, right, like in the next month, and then another daughter in college, and both of them are like, hey. Yeah. Good problem. I've got a lot of gifts. Bad problem. Yeah. I don't know. What am I supposed to do with all these things?
Yeah. So they'll come to your edge of the bed at 15 and be like, what do I do with my talents? Right. And you'll just help others.
You're right, Caitlin. I got this. I know how to help my daughter. You just say, help people. And then I get to go to sleep. This has been a great podcast already.
Right.
I'm loving this.
Tactics already. Tactics. Yeah.
You can help me by leaving my room so I can sleep. That's how you're going to
help people. The first person is me, dang it.
Right.
Like, how do I get paid for this?
I just thought that's interesting. Is like, I think a lot. In fact, my story in some senses is, and this is the second part, is it's out of the frustration of being in a space and seeing it go badly. That's what drove me. So I worked for some really nice guys who were really bad leaders. They meant well, they had great intentions, and they wrecked the organization. I don't mean it was annoying. Like, some of those organizations don't exist today because these guys could not figure out how to pull the team, make the decision. One guy over micromanaged. I went to another group. He wouldn't make a decision. Anyways, all this, I'm shaking my fist at God one day saying, it's not right. The world's held back for bad leaders and somebody should be helping these people. And it kind of felt like I got elbowed in the side, like, yeah, somebody. And so, like, It was this, I guess it's better than bottle washing. And then you get there and they're there's some wonderful parts to it, but there's also some like, wait a minute, this isn't as awesome as it could be. And what about this? And I think a lot of people just say, well, fine, then I'm out. I'm not like that critical moment where you were like, what if we came up with the better alternative? What if I changed the industry rather than just complain about the industry?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of companies and businesses are born out of that. I remember growing up in England. I grew up in a place called Bath, which is where James Dyson's from, the guy who originated the Dyson vacuum cleaner with the ball. That, it was like super futuristic. Or the first bag. I think they were the first bagless vacuum cleaner as well. And I remember as a kid watching the TV commercials, and it had this interview with James Dyson, and he's like super, like, I don't know, proper British, very sort of uppity. I hope he's not listening. Did he listen to your podcast? I don't know. But he's like, I was vacuuming one day, blah, 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 and it was losing its suction. And I think things should work properly. So I designed a new one, and I was like, okay, like I don't have that ability to go, the vacuum cleaner's not working, I'll design something better. I'm not that smart. But when things are not working very well or got a poor reputation, I do look at things and go, well, how can we turn this on its head? Like, what are the little tweaks we could do here? And I get people dynamics. I get that people are really complex. I understand that everybody has stuff going on in their world now that they didn't maybe 6 or 12 months ago. They show up differently because of circumstances in their life, and it affects them. Like, you might have a sick parent or a sick kid, or you some kind of crisis at home, or you finances or something going on, and it just affects how you show up. And I'm like, you just can't assume that everybody around is bad, or because they had a bad day that they're a bad employee. I'm like, we give ourselves a lot more grace than we give other people. So just pausing and going, okay, what the heck are we doing here? And every one of us have a choice to come and go. And the fact that you chose to be a part of my business and join in with my vision is a privilege. So number one, I really appreciate anyone who chooses to join my company. And I'm glad that every single day they choose to show up and give their all. Like, that's an amazing privilege that we have, that people choose to show up and give their all. And I just think we're gone are the days where we're like, you just need to be thankful you have a job, buddy. Like, we don't get to do that. Number one, like, people have choice in America. Number two, and the economy's great. It's always but I look at it and people talk about the war on talent. I'm like, there's always a war on talent for the best of the best. Like, you don't just get to, like, it's not warm bodies. It's like, if I want the best of the best people, they make career moves very, very different. So I got to be intentional about creating an environment where people want to work. I need to bring clarity around what winning looks like. I need to be really clear on what game we're playing and what each person's excellence look like in their role. They need to know definition and quantifiably, what does great look like in my role? Because I want to be here and I want to show up. That's the difference between A players and C players. Yes. They want to know what winning looks like. They're not just playing to play. They're like, I want to win the game. Yes. How do I win the game? Like,
I love that. Yes.
And the performance impact difference between an A player and even a B player is not like 10% better. It can be 20, 30 times the impact in some industries. Literally they've measured this. The difference between the very top and the next order of magnitude down is massive. And so, it takes maybe a little more work, and you cultivate them, and you got to really go chase those and invest to find the best and the best, and really give them the opportunity. And they will deliver 30x what you get from I just guess I'm showing up and doing the basics. This is worth the effort, man. It's massively valuable.
Okay, so I took... go real quick. I took some notes. Hold on, I'm that note taker. I'm that A player. Hold on. So
your turn, Caitlin. Your turn.
What Jonathan just said here. This is my notes. He said you've got to provide clarity, an environment to be the best. That's number 2. So clarity is number 1. Create an environment to be the best. Number 3, identify what game we're playing. And then number 4, create the definition of what excellence in the role looks like.
What is winning?
Yeah. What does winning look like? That sounds like it's the environment for success for an A player to come in and be like, oh yeah, I've got this.
Yeah. Because
I don't know if I would, the order I wasn't specific about the order. I know you put them in an order because that's the way your brain works and
Yeah.
not mine. Like, but I do think I'll give an example. A few years back, I just said to one of our VP of Ops, I'm like, hey, here's our org chart or accountability chart or whatever you want to call it with everybody's names on it and everybody's function. And I was like, I just want to look at it with color coding. And I said, I want to know who's giving at least 100% and who isn't. And I'm like, okay, so the only way we can do that is everybody needs to know what 100% looks like in their role. Like we have to quantify it. From my executive assistant needs to know exactly what 100% looks like. And so I made a statement back then. I said, 100% of your compensation equals 100% performance. It's an exchange. You are sitting in this role as an exchange. I'm going to give you, and often we negotiate salaries and comp. And I'm like, oh, I can do that all day long. We're just also going to, simultaneously, we must negotiate performance. I said, if you're going to provide more value quantifiably, I'll pay you more. But we're not going to talk about how much we're going to pay you. We're not have the conversation about what you're going to actually bring to the company that's valuable.
Yeah.
And so we quantify and put a number, and everybody's got a number that actually rolls up into the company's budget. I'm like, and if everything's green, we're making budget. Like that's what I wanted. And so we did that, and it just brought so much. The clarity brought so much peace for those who don't like ambiguity. It got the A players to go, come on, I want everyone to know that I'm in the green.
Yes.
That I'm doing what I'm paid to do. And people look to their left and their right and they want to know, because everyone has a comparison thing in them, like, am I doing all right compared to them? And then what it did to those who hate the performance side, they left because they weren't like, I'm like, self-select out. You're not doing the job. And it was
not a bad thing. If they're really not fired up about this work, both for us and for them, we don't want to make it easy for them to hang around and waste years on work that they don't love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's what I love about this. What we're talking about, we're about to dig into the actual deep specialty that I think you really are doing some remarkable things in the recruiting space. And I think it's going to help a lot of us. But this may be the first thing I'll call out for you leaders as we are thinking tactically how you do this. You might be able to hire somebody like Jonathan and his team to bring you a rock star. But if you have not prepared an environment that a rock star wants to work in, they may not say yes. And if they do, they may not stay very long. Like you don't just get to take rock stars and shove them into a mediocre culture space. They won't thrive. They won't stay. Like
well said.
Pre-work is get ready for rock stars so they actually want to work there.
Hey, I think when I'm around like competitive people, not just competitive people who care about excellence in everything, like they have a standard for the work they do. Anyone, they're not just playing to play. If you've like sat around with people and they're like, let's play this game, and somebody's there reading the rules and like, and you're like, someone goes, who cares about the rules? Let's just have fun. I'm like, I don't know. You know what fun is? Winning. That's what's fun.
Come on.
Winning is fun.
Yes.
Therefore, I need to I don't actually care about all the rules, but I need you to tell me how to win the game. Like, what is my goal? I'm trying to get to there with the most amount of money. Okay, let's do it. Like I just need to know. And then I also want to know how I'm going to cheat. Yeah, because that's another way I play games.
That's a different podcast, Jonathan. That's the difference.
We can edit that. Different podcast. Okay. Not cheat. I want to find out which rules have not been created, and you're going to want to create a rule afterwards when I'm done.
That's exactly.
Yeah. No, he's the dominator player type in the sense of this gamification guru stuff. But you do want to read the directions because you want to find the gray area of where it says, well, it didn't say I couldn't do that, so that's what I did.
Yeah, you got it. But I think finding people who actually care to know what game we're playing and what the rules are and what does winning look like. When I've hired people who don't even ask the questions, they don't ask. It's an interview. Well, anyway, I'll jump ahead if I get into that, but I'll pause. Let's just pause there for a second.
So I think though that is the right transition because, all right, so you guys. I think we talk all the time, right? How important hiring is. It's like
Mhm.
if I have to compare getting the best people or having all the best management strategy systems in the world, there's no question I'd take people. Now, of course, what I'd want is both, but there's no question that the quality of your people precedes everything else, sets the ceiling for everything else. All your cool ideas get implemented by your people. Get great people. And of course, from a culture standpoint, great leaders set that's like a multiplicable leverage point, right? You get a great leader and they shift the whole nature of a team. And so, great people, especially great leaders, there's almost nothing. I mean, like just say there truly is nothing I think more critical that you should invest more time, thought, and strategy in. Everything else is downstream of the people. So we talk about that all the time. It's in all our books and podcasts. And Caitlin and I just finished a nice long mini series talking about this. Um, but I think the problem is for most leaders, they don't do this very often. And so it's this super important thing that they're supposed to do once in a while. And it's not what they went to school for or ever got trained on. And they're just like handed this here, pick somebody awesome. Well, you literally, like you and your team interview hundreds, thousands of people on a regular basis and help sort and identify. So this is where I think would be really valuable for our folks listening is can we get into some of the best practices, what you learned on what to look for? How do you actually interview these folks? And somewhere along the way, I'd love for you to call out because a lot of them are working with recruiters, and they may not even have a concept for how good it can be. So call out, hey, there's a better way of doing this. The old system
Yeah.
kind of did this. Here's the better options.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can maybe
Yeah.
sequentially go through the process, but you tell me, like, give us some of the best lessons you've learned on how to do this better.
First and foremost, I'm going to say this. I was fired from hiring people in my own company. The primary revenue generator in our company is we've recruited and placed about 6,000 people in the last 5 years.
Bingo.
And I'm not even allowed to do it in my own company.
Nice.
The reason being is I didn't follow the process last time. I just said, everybody trust me. I'm a visionary leader who has this unique ability where I can see diamonds in coal like you can't. And you need to trust me. I've got these special powers, and this person is going to be a great hire. I know that they don't meet all of the scorecard requirements when we follow our process.
Yeah.
But trust me. And by the way, they're not going to report to me. One of you is going to manage them.
How'd that go?
Well, 30 days in, I was on vacation. I was in Zion National Park with my family, and I got a phone call from one of our directors and said, all right, you made me hire this person. They suck. And I don't even want to fire them. I think this is on you. And I'm like, you can fire them. And I'm like, all right, fine, I'll do it, So, and I wrote about it in my book called Right Seats, Right People. You can get it on Amazon. And in the book, it's when I was writing it, I was like, and we will call him Jeremy because that's his name. Anyway, and the publisher said, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, why not? He stole my laptop and never gave it back. So we're putting his name in there. I said, I'm not putting his last name in there. Just put Jeremy in there. Everyone knows it's Jeremy. I was so excited. So I went into the studio to do the audiobook, and I was ready to read I was going to take so much pleasure out of reading his name, Jeremy, on the audio. And I found out they'd taken his name out.
Oh.
You can't do that. Anyway, so that's why.
By the way, that's the second person now we need to make sure does not listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. James Dyson and Jeremy.
Jeremy unnamed. All right. No.
So anyway, but it's a joke in our company, like Jeremy. We don't want to get any more Jeremys in here, But okay, so number one is process. I just think, who goes for interview training ever? Like it's very rare that people are trained to interview people. And so it becomes like this gut thing of like, people come up with their own special process and they do these things like, I can tell you in 6 minutes if this person's going to work or not. And you're like, no, you can tell me if you like them, and that's it. But if we hire people for what they know and what we think about them, we'll end up firing them for who they are. Like it's the who, usually it's the who the people are that It's not. I think it's probably more related to not actually doing the job. It's like the actual character of the person. You just can't stand working with them when they're bringing like a cancer to your organization, or they're this, or there's like, rarely is it performance based. And so I should say rarely, but I mean, there's a lot of separation of employment. People leave bosses and managers. It's a relational dynamic.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Listen, I just have to jump in and acknowledge I've totally done that myself, because I'm also the visionary founder who's like, no, I got this. And I'm just going to like call out folks who are like me. There is a necessary amount of humility in this to recognize. I think we're not trained in it, but then we have this, I think it's tangled up in our sense. Like, if I'm a good leader, I just have a good instinct for people, and to acknowledge there's a professional skill and a process and tactics, and it doesn't matter how cool and creative I am. Yeah. I still have to follow the same process, or I don't get good with it either. And I
think the reality is probably many of your listeners are pretty decent when it comes to hiring. If they look around at their team, they're like, not that bad. But it's a rubbish process to actually diagnose when it doesn't work. So we just want to sweep those under the rug. I'm like, well, I did hire that person. I hired Jeremy. And it's like, when it doesn't work, we don't want to talk about it. When it does work, we're like, look at my amazing hire. And I'm like, I think if you're going to talk about hiring, it's so expensive to hire. And it's so expensive when you do a poor job of it.
Yeah.
The SHRM, the Society of Human Resources, says 3 to 5 times the cost of the person's annual salary for the hire. Some would go and say a heck of a lot more than that if you're in a critical executive role. If you're going to hire an executive, Vistage, which is a peer advisory group, they put out a stat saying 56% of executive hires fail in the first 18 months due to a lack of process in the hiring. Like, I'm like, so because people go, oh, I'm going to hire Bill because I used to work with him in my last company. He was great.
Right.
Bill, you want to wait? And then like everyone's like, so I guess we're hiring Bill then, like it just kind of pushes on through. Like, and there was no real process. So here, I'll give you some snapshot of like you'll find in the book. It's really, first and foremost, before you talk about people and like, oh, who should we hire for that role? Like, I work with her. Does anyone know anyone? Like, first and foremost, success. Quantify the job by 3 to 5 objectives that need to be done, achieved, or accomplished. Yes. Quantifiable. I'll tell you an anecdotal story on this one. It was in Chicagoland, actually, many years back, like 10 years back. And I was invited into a company, it's about $100 million distribution company. And they wanted my company to go and find a COO for them. And they said, I was sitting in the room with the CFO and the CEO, and I just met them the first time. They slid across a 4-page job description across the table to me. I thumbed through it. And then here's where the obnoxious Jonathan kicks in. I ripped it up and I threw it in the trash behind me. And I was like,
You physically ripped it up?
I physically ripped it up. I didn't.
Goodness.
I just ripped it up and threw it in the trash. And I just said, so what's the job? And they would look at me like I'm an idiot. And I'm like, okay. Imagine we hired the COO today, and fast forward a year, I'm coming in here, it's happy anniversary, and I say, how was that COO, by the way, last year? And you said, oh, they were the best thing our company's ever done. And I said, what's the number one thing that of impact in your business because we hired that person? It was so amazing. How is the company different? And if they'd said, oh, just a really great culture fit, they wouldn't have. They can't run a business like that and just say, we hired a great culture fit. I mean, you hired a COO, you paid $500,000. What did they do, achieve, or accomplish? And they said, EBITDA. We want to increase our EBITDA by this amount of percent. And I was like, wow. I said, is that possible? And they said, we think so. And I said, how? And they said, number one, we've got this big supply chain issue. I'm like, well, tell me about that. They said, well, we have 6 plants around the United States, and here's okay, great. So I wrote down, I go, what would they need to do in the first 90 days then? And I said, by day 90, if this thing's not done, you're sweating going, did we make the wrong hire? And they're like, okay, good. I'm like, all right, so that gets crushed. What about 180 days? What do you think they should have done by then? So I went through and I said, all right, number 2, what's the next thing? And they're like, okay, we have this huge inventory issue. And I was like, okay, I figured it all out. Same thing. What do they do to this 90, 180? I went down 3. I stopped at 3 and I said, okay, that this person did these 3 things. I mean, what would you pay them? I mean, with all bonuses, and we came up with the number. I'm like, wow, that's a big role with some nice rewards and massive impact on your EBITDA. I was like, this is a good job. I go, just remind me, was any of that on that job description? And they went, no. And I'm like, what was on there? I said, because I think I saw on page 4, they must be able to sit, bend, and stand and lift 25 pounds for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
I go, who put that on there? And they're like, HR. And I'm like, you want me to interview for that? Like, I said, let me ask you a question. I said, could the person have been hired and they check every single one of those boxes on their anniversary date and say, done, 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 done. And those 3 things that we just talked about here are not even done at all. And they said, yeah. And I go, what a big fat waste. And I was like, you didn't define the role by performance objectives, and you would have negotiated with this person on their salary to sit, bend, and stand and lift 25 pounds for extended periods of time. Like, done it, you know. Like,
I can lift
and I'm like,
50.
exactly. Like,
overachiever, Scott. Yeah.
But too many jobs we interview too many people based on a job description. Has nothing to do with the job. And the reality is, you wouldn't do it in your own home if you hired a contractor to renovate a bathroom. You wouldn't say, I just need a bathroom. And they'd be like, all right, cool. So toilet, do you want a shower or a bath? Toilet and sink? We go to all those 3? Cool. It'll just take me 8 weeks, and it's going to cost you that much. I'd be willing to bet most people have a spouse at least who's going to be like, I'd have some more opinions on what that bathroom looks like. You know, like, it needs to look like a certain thing. So define, and we don't pay those contractors unless it's exactly right. Why do we treat anything different in our businesses?
Thank you.
We don't define the role by what excellence looks like. And the great thing about it is when you do that, it's way easier to interview. You see, like, this thing I need to get done. Have you done anything similar to that? Could you tell me the story about that? How did you approach that? Who helped you get there? Who are you going to give most credit to? Who was your biggest obstacle when you accomplished that thing you did in the past? By the way, who was the biggest obstacle? It was Veronica. Great. I'm going to call Veronica. I'm going to ask her about her experience of working with you. You already told me she was the biggest obstacle, which I'm going to go in with my eyes wide open. But I would like to hear what Veronica's experience was working with you. So I'm like, oh, now you got real stories about real stuff related to the real job, rather than coming up with these silly interview questions that people are like, oh, Google's got this great one. How many golf balls can fit in the Dallas Cowboys stadium? I just want to see how great you think. I'm like, that's absolutely ridiculous. Like, how, you know, no one's smart enough to figure out how that applies to the job. So anyway, clearly define the job by performance objectives, and then ask a big question is, why would an A player who's absolutely crushing it somewhere else and could do this 120%, because I want that person, why would they want to stop what they're doing and consider joining me? Not why does the unemployed person who's, you know, sees your flapping sign in the wind, says we're hiring, going, oh my gosh, amazing, an answer to prayer. Like, I'm not saying those people are bad. I'm just saying that's not the pool that I really want to go fishing in.
Yeah, and who are you optimizing the process for? Every now and then you'll get some unexpected folks that weren't on the center of the bullseye that I was targeting for. But you should at least target the A players, right?
I don't think we've, in our history at Titus and with hundreds of employees, I don't think in our history we've ever hired anyone who's applied to work for our company.
Wow. Yeah. So you went to go find them.
I don't know of anyone in our company that we've hired who applied. We used to make the application really difficult, or just, I'm like, we'll do video application. Like, you've got to send in all these videos, because I just want to avoid the time wasters who just click to apply. I'm like, no. Plus, we're going to go and find them anyway. Like, I don't want to do that. You know. So I think asking that question, this person who's crushing it somewhere else, like, they think differently than B players and C players.
Yes.
So I think, you know, another thing is, like, because A players want challenges. I used to say only hire somebody who's never done the job before. Like, most job descriptions say things like, must have 7 to 10 years of experience. I'm like, well, I know me. If I've been doing something for 7 to 10 years, I don't want to go and do exactly the same thing.
No, bored out of my mind. Yes.
I want, it needs to be 20 to 50% bigger of a challenge than I've ever touched before. It needs to scare me a little bit, and I need to prove to you that I can do it. And I need to prove to my old boss I can do it. And when I hand in my resignation, then they go, "You're doing what?" And I'm like, "Yep, I am. Watch me." Like,
Right.
And I want them to be like, "I don't know. That's a big job for you, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it is a big job for me, but you don't got anything for me here, so I'm going over there."
Mm-hmm.
So I think, so how do you attract that person? Another good metaphor. I said this to another company owner. I said, okay, what's the biggest trade show or conference in your industry where all of the best people go? And they said this trade show, and I said, okay, so that's in Vegas. I go, all right. So let's say I went to that trade show to find the best person, which we do this as a company. Like, our clients they'll tell us where the people are, and we'll go find them.
Yeah.
100% passive candidate headhunting. So you're going to pay me. I'm going to go to that conference. I said, imagine at the end of the day, I've walked the trade show floors, I've talked to all of your competitors' people, and I'm standing in the elevator, and across from me is the person. They got their name tag on. It says what company, your competitor that they work for. It says their job title, and I know that that's what you want to hire. I'm not going to say, "Oh my gosh, we're hiring. Can you come and apply? Here's my card. Go and apply on our website." They'd look at me like, "I have a job." "No, I'm not applying for a job." "No way." And they said, "Well, what would you do then?" I said, I would get them to lean in. I would say, "Hey, interesting. So I see you're at that company. I've got this wicked problem I'm just struggling with. I cannot seem to figure out the answer."
Wow.
Here's what my problem is. My problem is I've got supply chain issues. I've got inventory issues. Nobody seems to be able to fix it. I got some amazing people on my team, but it's like no one's got the brain power or the strategy or the wisdom and the know-how to bring it all together. I would, if you're okay with it, do you have time for 20 minutes? We could meet in the bar downstairs. I want to unpack the problem. I would love to get your wisdom. What would you do to tackle that? Would you mind? I was like, I'd be willing to, but most A players would be like, "Well, sure, you're my number one competitor. I'll listen to your problems." That sounds fun. You didn't talk anything about anyone hiring. You didn't ask me for my resume. You just said, "How do you tackle this problem?" Well, if I like how you tackle the problem, you're leaning in emotionally now because you're thinking how you would tackle the problem. I'm like, would you like to explore a little bit more? If this was truly superior to what you're doing right now, would you consider it at least?
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, this podcast only grows through word of mouth. That's it. So if there's any part of this podcast that you think someone else should hear or would be helpful for something they're working on, it would mean a lot to me if you would share it. The whole reason I do this is to share the helpful stuff I'm learning with more people than I can reach in person. It could be via text, DM, whatever's easy. You hit the share button and you can help them and me in 5 to 7 seconds. Thanks. Do you know what I'm finding super amusing about this? That's kind of how I hired you, Caitlin. It's like,
I'm hearing that, Scott.
We've talked about this other series, but if you guys haven't heard this story, Caitlin had a mentor who said, "Hey, you need to talk to this Scott Wozniak guy." And she was thinking about career, and I want to do more consulting, and how do we figure this stuff out? And a 30-minute meeting lasted an hour, and it was not an official interview. It was, let's talk about how we handle this stuff. And by the end of that, I was like, and we should talk about hiring you to help us handle the same stuff. But the authenticity of that versus the performance we get from the pre-scheduled interview setup where we go, "What's your greatest weakness?" I really care too much. I work too hard, right? Come on. That's beautiful. I will say though, so I guess I sort of do that one already. I have accidentally done the other one where you said, "Man, I don't want to hire somebody who's already done it exactly. It's got to be the next thing," because that's what A players want. I've done that, but I don't know that I've done that as intentionally or clear. Like, I'm really locking in right now going, that I've never articulated that. That's been my life. Every major move made was the chance to tackle something bigger that I've never tackled before. And all the rock stars I know are that way. Yeah, same. If you want rock stars, you're going to have to offer the same opportunity.
Yeah, I would say in every past role I've ever had, there's never been a roadmap. I had to create it. And so it's coming in with like a blank canvas. Like, here's our general direction we want to go. And I'm like, ooh, I get to figure it out. This is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it's a challenging. Well, here's the deal. We understand this concept and we do it in our companies when we promote people.
Yes.
They've not done that job before.
Yes, that's right.
We go, hey, we're promoting Caitlin. And she's done an amazing job at this, and this. She's proven herself to be faithful. She works hard. She's smart. She's this. Her character's there. But she's never done this job before, but we're promoting her into it because we believe she can do it and she wants to do it. Now, everyone sit back. Let's support Caitlin in this new venture. We're going to cheer her on, and she's going to make us better for it. And then when there is no Caitlin around, we're like, shoot, I don't know anyone in our team who can do this. I just don't think this is the right person. So then we go outside the organization and we totally have a different approach. We go, I want someone who's got 7 to 10 years experience doing this. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense. So take the same view and promote someone else. I'm not saying it's easy because you don't have the history, the 3 years of working with that person, so you don't know the character. Now, but there is if there's a process.
The process becomes so critical.
Same process. So to find the seat, where the heck are these people is the next question, like the search, like where are you going to find these people? And if your whole conclusion is post and pray that the right person applies, now I am somebody who deeply believes in the power of prayer. That's not my sole approach for hiring. Where are they? And then how am I going to select this person? Am I going to go through 10 people and say, I just need 3 more to compare to the other 10? Like, what am I comparing? Am I comparing them to one another? Or am I actually comparing them to that performance profile I created, those 3 to 5 things?
Yes.
Like, I want to find somebody who can do this job, who really wants to do this job with me and with my company, with our culture and in our environment. And I want somebody who's going to absolutely crush it. Like, that's what I want.
Yes.
And so I'm like, okay, what's my selection process? So we have a whole process for selecting 3 things. We call it the head, heart, and briefcase. Head, heart, briefcase. Head meaning behaviors and cognitive. Heart meaning values, motivations, and character. And briefcase, old dated term. I'd like to update it to head, heart, hands, but my head of marketing won't let me change it. So whatever. It's head, heart, briefcases. What do they bring to the table by skills and experience? Do they have the exact skills and experience to get that job done? And everything else is irrelevant in my mind. Like, why do they have to have that experience? I don't know. Like, if you're making stuff up, like, why do they need 7 years of experience managing people? Why 7 years? What if they did 7 years of managing people and they just are terrible at it? It's like, you know, years of experience are irrelevant to me, completely irrelevant. It's what you did with those years is really important. What you did. And so I think, you know, that what's your scorecard for hiring, and can you do that objectively? I do believe in assessments. I think that's really important. There are things that you cannot figure out. For your listeners, I'll give you my favorite interview question of all time. It's one interview question. That's all I ask. It lasts probably an hour and a half. Just one question. And it's you can only ask this question if you've actually defined the job by performance and outcomes and what you need to get done. Otherwise, what are you interviewing for? Like, you're just telling stories.
Right.
It's not a date, and you're not trying to find a culture fit. Primarily, you're paying somebody 100% of their income to get 100% of the job done. Let's focus on that. The culture fit is really, really important, but it's irrelevant if they don't get the job done. Like we do this, you know, the first 100 days in office when you put somebody in an elected official. Like, we want to know, did they get that job? What are they doing? Or are they just building relationships with the community? Which, by the way, some job descriptions say that. And I'm like, okay, all right. Are they going to hit quota, or are we just having lots of lunches? You know? So, all right. So, interview question. Okay. Tell me your most significant accomplishment. Like, and I want to keep it career-based. Like, when you look back on your whole history, what's the most significant project or accomplishment that you could talk about, your most proud moment?
I love
or
that.
Project or season? Now, the reason this question is so important is this. It's very hard for people to make it up because there are so many layers to the story. And it is a story that you're going to ask a million questions. So And I use this all the time, not even in interviewing people. If I have salespeople reproach me, I tell me the biggest project you ever worked on. Like, oh, tell me about that project. What was the quote on it? How much did that project cost? Like, how much commission did you make on that project?
Yeah.
What was your commission percent? What percentage? So you're hiring a salesperson. Really hard to interview salespeople. I think it's one of the hardest ones because often they're quite likable and they've got some great stories, and we like them, and we go, they're going to be amazing, you know. But they seem to keep switching jobs every 12 to 18 months when they don't hit quota, you know. But it's like, okay, so I asked them this question: tell me about your biggest accomplishment, and they go, oh, okay. Or I'm like, or your biggest sale. And they're like, okay. I'm like, all right, let's start with this. How much commission did you make? Oh, I think it was roughly this much. I'm like, and I don't want to roughly. It was your story. You chose this story. The biggest deal of your life. How much commission did you make? Write that down. What was your commission percentage? Because that's part of your comp plan. You know what your percentage was, right? What was it? It was 6%. Okay, cool. So that put the revenue of the deal at what? Now I'm just testing them a little bit here. Like, do they know their numbers?
But if you're talking a real life epic story, if they can't give you real numbers, it gets really clear that this isn't actually the real answer, or you're making stuff
How
up.
many salespeople do you ask them about their pipeline and they tell you generalities? I'm like, what's the pipeline? How many meetings did you do? Roughly this. No, I don't want roughly. How many meetings did you do, and what's your pipeline, and what's the quotes that are going out? I want to know. You already know your numbers. I don't want stories here. You know, if I'm hiring you, so you know what I'm saying. So we're getting into these things. I'm like, all right. So back to the deal again, and I'll use a sales interview because it's quite helpful. We all had to hire salespeople at some point. I'm like, all right. So back to that deal. Where did it originate from? Like, did a lead come from marketing? Did you go and find it yourself? Oh, I don't remember. Sorry. Back up again. Your story, the biggest deal of your life. You don't remember? Where? Well, remember now. Choose to remember. Think about it. Memory recall. Where did you get it from? Okay. So it was referred to you. Who referred you? It was John Smith. All right, cool. So where was John Smith? I'm getting names. I'm getting details, right? Tell me about the gatekeeper. Tell me about the big obstacle. When you went in there, how did you present? Like, was that a PowerPoint? Was it this? Like, I'm getting into the details here.
Wow.
It's a real story. Their story. Like, a salesperson, I want a storyteller. I definitely want a storyteller. Like, but you better not be making stuff up. If you lie, I will find out. I do not want to hire a lying salesperson. Yeah. So, and I have ended interviews just straight up call them out on a lie. I actually said somebody in an interview once, I said, all going great. I said, so what? I was 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. What did you tell your boss we're doing right now? Because you're not working, obviously. So you're here with me. But what did you tell your boss you're doing? Did you tell him anything? Or was it just like, out of office? Like, oh, I said I was at the dentist. I'm like, oh, yeah, good old, that's what they call that white lie, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. And I was like, which is totally normal, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so when things get a little bit awkward and you don't really want to tell the truth, you're tip of the tongue, it just flows off. And then they go, you're backing me in a corner. And I'm like, it's totally fine and normal. I get it. That's how most of society works. I said, it just in my company, it doesn't work. I said, we don't do the white lie thing. It's like truth or not truth. Yeah. We tell the truth here. I was like, so it's fine. I get that works for you as a survival mechanism. It's just, we wouldn't trust you in our environment. It's totally fine. You're just not going to fit here. I was like, so, I mean, we can keep chatting for a bit, but we'll end the interview at this point because if I hired you in 6 months' time, you say you're going to the dentist, guess what I'm thinking? You're not going to the dentist.
Right.
I was like, so now I don't trust you, and therefore I can't promote you. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, so if you've got some framework for that in the interview, you can really dig those things out, and that's where you find your references. By the way, they're real people with real names, and you have every right to call them. They brought it up. Now, I wouldn't call their current employer. I think that's a bit rude, but I would call their previous one, and I would say, hey, I was talking to Scott. I said, thanks for taking my call here. I was chatting with Scott recently, and we're looking at collaborating on a project. And I was asking him some big story, and he told me about that story where he interacted with you, that big project. Do you remember that project? Like, yeah, I remember that project. I'm like, tell me about that. Like, if I was to work with Scott again, what advice would you? I know I never even mentioned an interview. I said, if I was to work with Scott again, just as a character reference, what would you say to that? What advice would you give me the best way to manage him in a project? And that's where I get my true stories. They're like, he said what about the project?
Yeah.
He said he did that, and that was not him. That was Susie. Susie did that project.
Oh, and there you go.
And I'm
There
like,
you go.
oh, really? What was his role on it? Like, he was there's it, you know, like, or he got removed from that project. The client couldn't stand him. And I've heard all of these things.
Yeah.
So real people, real stories, but it's one interview question. Tell me about your most significant, and you find out the way they approach things, and your questions are relevant to that job you need to get done. Like, okay, so I know that there's going to be some conflict in this role because I've got 3 other people who've actually put their name in the hat for this job, and internally, and I'm not putting them on the role. You're going to have to manage them, or you're going to have to interact with them. It's going to be tough. Really? So back to your story. Tell me how you handled some of those difficult conversations. How did you approach it? And if they start flunking out because they can't remember or they can't this, I'm like, I don't think it's the right person for the role. Yeah. But guess what? Some of their references might be good people as well. Like, I'm like, what did they do? What did that person do in the job?
Like, Susie, the one who actually did the project, right? Like,
exactly.
Come on.
And I'm like, interesting. It was. I love the story. It's just it wasn't about you. You were a supporting actor. Right. You were not the main role. Like,
that's funny.
That's hilarious.
Really helpful to get your names in there. And then I would just say this: have a scorecard, and have other people have a scorecard too, and then compare notes to the scorecard. I'm not somebody who wouldn't hire the first person. I would hire the first person. Is that the right person? Why would I interview 5 people just to compare them to one another? I'm like, if this person scores really high for this role, I'm like, I would go straight away.
This is like an objective excellence process versus I'm going to talk to 5 and I'll pick the best of the 5. They might all suck. And like, man, he sucked a little less. That's terrible. There's a standard. We want someone who can actually deliver at this level. When you find them, whether that's the first or the 15th person, you know you have a valuable candidate. Like this becomes a real professional process, not a storytelling sales game where you're trying to hype each other up.
It's like you created the cookie crumble path for the unicorn to follow. You know, we're always looking for those unicorns.
Nice.
I remember the billboard, that was decades back. It was like, rather than just putting like we're hiring in their phone number, they were trying to get all these like the wicked smart nerdy engineers or whatever. They just had this giant equation. They just said this equation equals our phone number. If you can figure it out, call us because we're hiring.
Oh, nice.
I mean, they figured out I want those people who like to solve problems.
Yes.
Like, and it's just like get inside the minds of the people you want to hire. I remember this is again probably about 20 years ago. There was a client of ours, and I was like working through how do you get the best people in the room. And they said, oh, we did an executive search, and we knew there were 5 people in the country that we wanted, and we just sent them the brand new iPhone in the mail to their place of employment, programmed the CEO's phone number in it, and it just said, we'd love to have a conversation. This is yours to keep, but give us a call. Like,
it's like a decent phone moment.
I know. It's just like, just make the phone call, you know? So, when I heard that, I'm like, that's brilliant. How do I apply that into my world? And we had it was actually a company that was in telecommunications in the UK, and they said, we got this like cutting edge technology. Like we're really excited about it. There's probably only 15 people in the whole country who could do the job that we need. What could you find them? And I said, I got something better for you. I said, would you hire more than one? And they're like, oh, heck yeah, we're going to as we grow. And I'm like, all right, get an exclusive like restaurant side room. Okay. I said, I want your head of engineer there. Pick a date that works for you. And I will invite every one of the head engineers at all of these 12 organizations, and I will invite them to a very exclusive, they have to sign an NDA, and you're going to share them your big problem. And I said, and we're going to invite them to a room together, and I'm going to let them know that there are 12 people invited, and they're the 12 of the best in the whole country. And I'm going to invite them to this exclusive, private, and it's confidential both ways. They can't share about it to them, and you will not share about it to anyone else either. I want them to feel it's very exclusive and very special. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, let's do it. I said, you're going to show them a presentation. of some of the, and they're like, we don't want to show them everything though. I'm like, I don't care what you show. I was like, it doesn't even need to be your biggest problem. I was like, the whole goal here is get them in the room and get these people talking, and they need to know you, and they need to know where you're going and what the future of your organization is. I was like, and I said, because these people want to work on the biggest, sexiest, challenging problems with the smartest people. Yes. They actually don't want to be the smartest person in the room. They want to be in the room with the 12 smartest people in the whole country. And so we got them. We didn't get all 12 of them, but they were just giddy at the end of it because they had 6 or 8 of these people in the room at this private event. They told their problems and shared it out, and they had amazing discussion, and they were taking notes and they were learning things, and they hired multiple people from that group because those people then knew. And I'm like, it costs. I said, don't pay us that 25% fee of these really high level executives. You can do it way cheaper. I'll make the phone calls. Just pay for the dinner. So we've done this at college level as well. Yeah. Like we said, college grads, like, hey, would you come? Same thing. I did it in Massachusetts, and I said, let's get the best of the best graduating class and say, hey, we're going to meet with the head of engineering for this company, blah, blah, blah. And just invite them to a meet and greet. It's not an interview, and it's not a job fair. Like, we want you to come and meet. So I think, thinking about get inside the minds of the A players. How do they think? Because they make the career moves very, very different than B's and C's.
Well, guys, listeners, I think you can see why we are so excited about partnering with Titus Talent and all the cool stuff Jonathan and his team are doing. This isn't just how do I crank out more numbers? How do I trick them with a fancier interview question? There's a fundamental shift in how you think. And if this is feeling overwhelming for you, then you don't have to do it alone. You can partner with them and have them help you. You can shift the way you do this, because listen, I'll wrap up here. You elevate the quality of the leaders coming into your company. You elevate everything else. Like there isn't anything more critical than this. I would say it's first in the sequence of it and in the critical impact of it. You almost can't invest too much in this because the returns are just so powerful. So thanks, Jonathan, for hanging out. And I think we could go on for hours. Maybe we'll have to come back and do another round with you on some of this. This has been phenomenal.
Let's do it. Thanks a lot for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, you might want to sign up for our weekly newsletter. It's all new content with the same themes. You can subscribe for free and learn more about how we partner with our clients to build legendary companies at swazconsulting.com. That's www.swozconsulting.com. And if you want to get access to the actual tools and techniques that we use with our elite consulting clients, check out our online program at legendarybrandsacademy.com. That's www.legendarybrandsacademy.com. Greatness is possible. You just have to build the right engine.